This is what a 30-minute 5K pace looks like. And this is what a 20-minute 5K pace looks like. In this video, I'll break down the fastest way to get to that sub-20 5K, no matter your starting point. And then I'll give you examples of training weeks for beginners, intermediates, and advanced runners, so you know exactly what to do starting today. My name is Nicklas, I'm a sports scientist, physiotherapist, and former professional triathlete. So how hard is it actually to break 20 minutes in a 5K? A guy named Brian Rock analyzed over 2.2 million results in 2024 and found that less than 2% of runners ran under 20 minutes. That means if you want to run a sub 20 minute 5K, you're aiming for a performance in the top few percent. And here's the truth. While it's my belief that almost anyone could get to that sub 20 minute mark if they committed fully, it's not realistic for everyone. Age, gender, time, and resources all play a huge role. But if you want to maximize your chances, there are 6 key areas that you need to master: training, weight, nutrition, psychology, pacing, and running form. And I'm going to break each of them down for beginners, intermediates, and advanced runners. And if you want to take the guesswork out, I've built a complete 5K training plan that maps out everything week by week. It's the same system that gets results like this. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to grab it. Now let's look at exactly how to train to get under that magic 20-minute mark. If you're new to running or running less than 20 kilometers per week, then you don't need to worry about fancy training strategies just yet. Your number one focus should be consistency and gradual progression. But the real question is, how do you become a consistent runner? None of all the science and smart training strategies will work if you're not consistent. So we need to make running a habit. Now there's a bunch of science about habit building, and if you're having a hard time staying consistent, then I will highly recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. But if you don't have the time to read that, here's a quick TLDR for you. Basically, every habit follows a 4-step loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. The cue is what triggers the habit. For running, that could be laying out your shoes the day before. The craving is the desire. Maybe it's feeling fitter, maybe it's relief. Or maybe it's running a sub 20 minute 5K. Remind yourself of why you run. The response is the action itself. So lacing up your shoes and going out the door. And the reward is what reinforces it. That could be the endorphin rush you get after a run. Or even something simple like tracking your miles in an app. So if you want to stay consistent, make the cue obvious, the craving attractive, the response easy, and the reward satisfying. That way running becomes less of a struggle and more a natural part of your week. Once you're running 2, 3, or more times per week consistently for months, it's time to train specifically for that sub 20 minute 5K. And to make your training most effective, we have to look at something called training intensity distribution. Now stick with me here, it's actually pretty simple. A scientific review from 2022 that looked at the characteristics of the best runners in the world found they don't just train hard all the time. In fact, about 80% of their training is done at an easy pace, and only 20% is hard. This is called the 80-20 rule, or polarized training. So why does it matter? Because if you run hard all the time, you risk injuries or you risk burning out. But if you only run easy, you'll never get fast. A polarized approach gives you the best of both worlds, building endurance while still improving speed. So what does this look like in practice? If you run a total of 200 minutes per week, 160 of those should be easy, and only 40 should be allocated to harder sessions like interval training. But you need both if you're going to run a sub 20 minute 5K. This is the framework that turns consistency into progress. Now, the harder sessions could be VO2 max intervals, or threshold runs, or hill sprints. And I'll show you an example of how to put all of this together into a weekly schedule by the end of this video. But if you really want to kick it up a notch, then there's still one thing missing. And that thing is called periodization. Now, if you're already consistent and running a lot and you have experience with structured workouts, it's time to look at periodization. This is when you look beyond just what workouts to do and look at when to do them. Periodization means breaking down your training into different blocks that each serve a specific purpose. Most coaches use 3 different blocks when preparing for a race. The base phase, where you build aerobic capacity with mostly easy mileage and some steady runs. The build phase, where you introduce some more intensity like threshold runs, VO2 max intervals, and race-specific sessions. And the peak phase, where you sharpen your fitness, reduce volume, and focus on quality so you hit your best performance on race day. The power of periodization is that it layers in fitness progressively. Endurance first, then strength and speed, and then specificity. Instead of trying to do everything at once, you train in cycles that build upon each other. And that's what allows advanced runners to break through plateaus. It's also what separates you from just being fit to being in race shape. You're not just running. You're timing your training so that you peak when it matters. So how do we actually periodize our training like this? Or put another way, what does this look like in practice? A systematic review from 2022 looked at what the best runners in the world are doing. And here's the simple takeaway. First, think hard day, easy day. You don't stack hard days back to back. Instead, you follow up every challenging day with something easy to allow your body to adapt. Second, in the base and build phase, for most people, the best approach is what's called a pyramidal model. That means about 80% of your training should be easy, about 15% should be that medium pace or threshold pace, and then about 5% should be hard. Then, when you hit the peak phase, we flip the script slightly. Now we do a polarized approach with about 80% easy and then 20% hard and very little in the middle. And each phase usually lasts somewhere around 4 to 16 weeks, depending on how long you have to train for your event. But here's the truth. You can have the best training plan in the world and still miss sub 20 if your form breaks down. Form is the silent killer of 5K performance. You can have the fitness, but if your technique breaks down when you get tired, then you're going to slow down. A study from 2023 compared beginner and experienced runners after a 5K and found that experienced runners kept their form efficient while beginners started to break down once fatigue set in. So the real key is not just having perfect form when you're fresh, it's having a perfect form when you get tired. Now, if you're a beginner, your main job is just to become aware of your running form. Don't overthink your biomechanics, just focus on a few simple cues. Run tall with your chest open. Try to up your cadence by about 10%, and let your arms drive the rhythm. Once you're consistent, the next step is training your form under fatigue. Remember, fatigue exaggerates any weakness. So here's a couple of things you can focus on. Add some form drills once or twice per week. Use strength training for your legs and your core to keep you stable. And do workouts that force you to reset your form under fatigue. Things like a 3 by 10 minutes hard with a 1 minute break in between works wonders here. Then during your 1 minute break, focus on your technique and then start up again. This helps your form become more durable and not just doable. If you're already close to sub 20, then your form can be the difference between running 20:05 and 19:59. At this level, it's all about refinement. Here's a few things you can try. First, film yourself running at your goal race pace, so 3:59 per kilometer or 4 minutes per kilometer for at least 5 minutes. Then look for subtle breakdowns in that last minute. Do you drop your cadence or do you do some overstriding? Then use strength training and plyometrics to reinforce your efficiency and your spring. The margin of error gets smaller the faster you get. So keeping your form sharp when it matters can be the breakthrough. But form is only half of the equation. There's another factor that quietly makes or breaks your 5K, and that's weight and nutrition. Get it wrong, and no amount of training or great running form can save your race. You see, weight is a crucial part of running, and in general, the lighter you are, the faster you get. But before you go starving yourself, there's one very important note to make, and that is that losing weight while running can become very addicting. And unfortunately, especially in running, there's a real issue called relative energy deficiency in sports, or RED-S. This means you get all sorts of problems with your hormones and your mood by training too much and eating too little. So make sure to eat enough to fuel your performance and don't let your weight determine whether you're going in the right direction or not. Your performance should always be your guiding line. Also, make sure that you feel good. If you're in doubt whether or not this affects you, I highly recommend seeing a professional. But if you are healthy and looking to lose some weight, here's what the science say to do. A review from 2023 found that most recreational runners naturally improved body composition just by running 10 kilometers per week. So when you're a beginner, you don't necessarily have to micromanage your diet. Just moving more and keeping things simple will usually move things in the right direction. Once you're running consistently, we need to be a bit more intentional if we want to keep losing weight. And here's the thing. When we talk about running and weight loss, the rules don't change. The same 3 things always matter most. I've broken this down more in another video, but here's the short version. A meta-analysis from 2025 found that the big 3 that actually move the needle the most are a sustained calorie deficit, strength training alongside your running, and enough protein. Everything else, meal timing, fasting, you name it, are fine-tuning. The big 3 are what matters the most. When you're an advanced runner, you're probably already lean. And now it's all about that fine-tuning. With some of the best athletes in the world, we do weight cycles. This means they might lose a few pounds going into their A race, that could be a World Championships or an Olympics, and then just straight after that race, we try to regain those pounds. We do this to avoid that relative energy deficiency. And to be honest, that's probably the biggest problem if you're running a lot. Don't get addicted to the scale. Measure your performance and how you're feeling. That's all that matters. Now, what about race day? Should we eat something special? For short events like a 5K, you don't need to take in massive amounts of carbohydrates like you do in a marathon. According to a review from 2025, you should just aim for about 6 to 10 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight in the 24 hours before your race. Then have a simple high-carb meal 2 to 3 hours before your race. It could be something like toast or rice or a bagel. And make sure to stay hydrated. If you want a small boost that has been scientifically proven to work, then rinse your mouth with some sugar just before the race starts. That's really all it takes to make sure nutrition isn't the thing holding you back during your 5K. So your training is dialed in, your form is on point, and your nutrition and weight is on point. But none of it matters if you blow up on race day. And that's why pacing is key. And it's where most runners miss their shot at a sub 20-minute 5K. A 5K is short enough to feel like you can just go out sprinting, but it's long enough that you can burn out completely and lose minutes in the last 2K. A scientific review from 2019, literally called Keeping Pace, analyzed pacing strategies from 800 meters all the way to the marathon. When it came to the 5K, they found that elite runners actually use a slightly positive split, meaning they start a bit faster, then they hold steady until that final sprint at the end. But here's the problem. When beginner runners try to copy that, they don't just start out a bit faster. They go out guns blazing. And then by the second kilometer, they're already cooked. That's called overpacing, and it's one of the most common reasons that people blow up in the 5K. So if you're a beginner, your number 1 goal is to avoid blowing up. Most beginners go out way too fast. So for the first 2 kilometers, go out a bit slower than you'd like to. And then in the middle, hold steady, and for the final kilometer, just leave it all out there on the track. That's the safest way to pace your 5K without blowing up. If you're closer to sub 20, then you might try to do a slight negative split. It gives you some control in the beginning and that mental edge to finally pick it up by the end. So here are my suggestions. For the first half, run just a touch slower than your goal pace. Then, when you hit the halfway point, accelerate slowly so that you run faster for the last half of the race. And for the final 800 meters, just go all out. This pacing strategy builds confidence and teaches you how to close strong. Think of it like saving your nitro for the last lap in a video game. Use it too early and you're empty before the race even starts. Save it for the end and you'll be passing by people who are falling apart. And that's what sub 20-minute 5Ks are made of. Now, if you're in the low 20s and just looking for that breakthrough, then the advice is the same as for the intermediate runner. Negative split or at most an even split. And it's because until you're under 20 minutes on a 5K, going out with a slight positive split, so going out slightly too fast, is still too risky. It's what elites do when they're fighting for positions, but not what you should be doing if you're fighting for a time. So the best practice is still a controlled start and a faster finish. Okay, so we've covered the principles, but how do you actually pull all of this together into a training plan? This is where most people get stuck. They know the theory, but they don't know how to put it into practice. So let me give you an example of exactly what a week could actually look like. Let's start with a beginner week. At this stage, the goal isn't to smash workouts. It's laying the foundation and staying consistent. So basically, you could just go out for 2 or 3 or 4 easy runs. But here's another way to go about it. On Monday, we do 3 times 5 minutes form-focused intervals with a 1-minute rest in between. On Wednesday, we do 20-minute easy, finishing with 4 by 20 seconds short sprints. On Thursday, we rest, and on Friday, we do 4 by 3 minutes VO2 max intervals. Saturday and Sunday, we also rest. Once you're training regularly, we can mix things up. Now the goal is to add some structured intensity while keeping 70 to 80% of our training easy. We also start adding some strength training. We could also do that with a beginner, but I always feel like it's better to start with less, and then we can always add on more from there. Here's what a week could look like. On Monday, we do 6 by 2 minutes at 3K to 5K pace. On Tuesday, we rest. On Wednesday, we do an easy run with some running drills and some strides. On Thursday, we add some heavy strength training. Then on Friday, we do a 35-minute progression run, starting slow and building to our 5K pace for the final 5 minutes. On Saturday, we rest, and on Sunday, we do an easy run of 65 minutes. Finally, if you're already running 5 times per week, this is how it could be structured. On Monday, we do 5 times 3 minutes at 5K pace with a 90-second rest. On Tuesday, we do an easy run with some running drills and some strides. On Wednesday, we do 2 by 12 minutes at threshold pace. On Thursday, we do some heavy strength training. On Friday, we do 80-minute easy with surges every 15 minutes. On Saturday, we do some more heavy strength training. And on Sunday, we add some intensity with 8 by 300 meters at 1500 meter pace. But what about that strength training? What should it actually look like if we want to run faster for longer? I'll show you exactly how strength training can make you faster and less likely to get injured in this video right here.